Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll pick up with book of Genesis, book of Bereshis, chapter 21, verse 9, laning of first day Rosh HaShanah. We left off yesterday talking about the pasuk that Sarah sees Yishmael laughing or causing laughter, and she's very clearly very disturbed by this, and she tells Avram that Yishmael has to leave the house. And the Ramban brought down a variety of ideas from different Rishonim, whether it be that he was committing sins, whether it be that he was arguing about matters involving inheritance, whether it be that he was just running around like a young boy that was bothering her. Various ideas. Just before we move on to the next point, I just want to share with you this forno. We discussed yesterday that there's a tremendous emphasis in the pasuk, in the psukim, that it's Hagar's son Yishmael. It comes up in actually it doesn't even really call him Yishmael. The emphasis is it's Hagar's son. She even says expel the maidservant and her son. In other words, even though it's bothering her what Yishmael is doing or saying or something, it seems to all run back to Hagar. So we had a shot yesterday in the Ramban that the point was it's not appropriate for his station. He's like born from a maidservant to the house. He shouldn't be mocking Yitzchak. But the Sforno is really interesting. Sforno on Pasuk Tes. As Ben Agara Mitzris, Chashva shehis orer lozeh halag mebnei sheshama kach me'imo. Sarah assumed that Yishmael was inspired to mock Yitzchak in the way that he did because he must have heard it from somewhere. And who must he have heard it from? His mother. Okay, so that's why there's this great emphasis on the mother. Next one, Mitzachek, Malig al Hanmishte Shnasa Beves Avram. He was mocking the whole idea of this party. It was a party for the weaning of Yitzchak. But Amro, why was he mocking the idea? Because he was saying, Shnesadra Avimelech. You think this is Avraham's child? It's not Avram's child. It's Avimelech's child. If you remember the story, Sarah had been taken by Avimelech, and then Avimelech was stricken with an illness by God, and Avram davens that Avimelech should be well, and Avimelech understands they did something wrong, and he sends Sarah back to Avram, and Avram davens for Avimelech, and soon after Avimelech becomes healed, but Avram merits a child, and there's a whole idea Rashi brings down that in the merit of Avram's tefillos for Avimelech he merited a child, but we all know that the wise guy on the street puts facts together, or on the web, puts facts together in the most interesting of ways. So there were people who said, Avram and Sarah didn't have a child for all these decades, and Sarah's with Avimelech, and next thing you know, she's pregnant. Who do you think the father is? Vatam. So that's what Yishmael is mitzachek. Yishmael's like, Avram's making this big party. This is ridiculous. Everyone knows this isn't his son. Now, if this is what he's saying, why wouldn't he be saying it when Yitzchak was born? Why is he only saying it when Yitzchak is weaned? Because it took a while for the rumor mill to get going. So, when Yitzchak was born, Yishmael hadn't heard these rumors. But by the time Yitzchak was having the party of weaning, Yishmael had heard plenty of these rumors. Or maybe he was saying the same thing when Yitzchak was born, but Sarah didn't notice it at the time because she had just given birth to a baby. She was kind of busy. But now, it's a party. She's walking around and she hears him mocking this. So it's another shot in what he's laughing about. And according to this, the idea is that she sees whatever his mocking is as being an extension of the attitude he must be seeing from his mother. And that's why she says throw them both out. And it's just an interesting shot. Okay, now in the next verse, in verse 10, we read it yesterday, so we won't read it again. But Sarah says to Avram, we need to throw Yishmael out of the house because he's not going to inherit with my son. Well, is inheritance dependent on what house you live in? What's exactly the connection? So the Kli Yakar on Pasuk Yud. Ki lo yirash benu amoazos. The Kli Yakar says, what? By expelling Yishmael, that ensures that he won't get any inheritance? How does that even work? Venira, it would appear, that what's being discussed right now is inheritance of deeds. Sarah saw as Ben Hagar HaMitzris Avraham mitzachek bigilui arayos. He's going with the pshat that she saw Yishmael committing different sins. So Sarah sees Yishmael committing sins. Mitzad shaya ben Hagar mitzris holida bedomela. Now, is that normal conduct for the son of Avram Avinu? If you remember, we actually had the Ramban raised yesterday. God extols Avram for being a person who will pass on this wonderful lifestyle to his children. So how does that match? How does that we say that about Avram as this is going to be this great thing of his, and then his son is doing this, that, and the other? So obviously, we obviously know that every child has their own free will, and you can't judge parents based on children. But it's just so striking that Avram is specifically praised for this in the Torah itself. So the Ramban actually drew a whole different conclusion, but the Kli Yakar says that what Sarah is saying is it's clearly not a son of Avram conduct here. It's clearly a son of Hagar. It's not the father, it's the mother, because there was a lot of sexual immorality among the Egyptians, and that's where Hagar comes from. So Al-Kain, skipping a line or two, Al-Kain Amra Sarah L'Garsho, Kadesh Lo Yilmod Yitzchak Mimasav. So Sarah says we have to expel Yishmael from the house because we don't want Yitzchak to be influenced by Avram. Sorry, we don't want Yitzchak to be influenced by Yishmael. Avram is a good influencer. We don't want Yitzchak to be influenced by Yishmael. Tomer Adarabba, Shema Yitzchak Yahavcha v'Yachziru l'Mutav. Maybe not. Maybe Yitzchak will influence Yishmael in a positive way. Maybe give it a chance. I'll say Amra. Yadati b'nevuah. To that she responds, I know it in prophecy, ki lo yirash im b'ni mimase aviv Avram hatovim. I know he's not going to follow the ways of Avram Avinu. V'alked nisarach shash shemo yimod Yitzchak medu. So he's not going to follow the ways of Avraham. So now the question is Yitzchak going to be influenced by him? So what the Kli Yakar is saying is what it means. He's not going to inherit. His assets are not going to be enhanced by Avram's possessions. He's not going to follow the ways of his father. So I know he's not going to follow. He's not going to be the spiritual heir of his father. I know he's not going to be that. So if he's not going to be that, now we're running a terrible risk that Yishmael will be adversely impacted by him. That Yitzchak will be adversely impacted by Yishmael. So that's the Kli Yakar's pshat in the pasuk. Okay. Verse 11. Vayera hadavar ma'od b'nei Avraham. This was very bad in the eyes of Avraham, al odos beno, regarding his son. It's an interesting, the al odos beno, like, and if it wouldn't have said regarding his son, wouldn't you have thought that it means it bothered him, the idea of throwing his son out? Why does he have to say regarding his son? So it's an interesting Ramban over here. So Ramban and pasuk Yud Aleph, al odos beno. So first of all, he starts off by quoting Rashi that actually what really bothered him was more that he was told that Yishmael is on this bad path. The straightforward meaning of the verse, says Rashi, is he was bothered that Sarah was saying, let's throw Yishmael out of the house. That bothered him terribly that Sarah would say that. What I think the pshat is, Ki akosov siper b'chvod Avraham. The pasuk is speaking about the honor of Avraham for Amar, and it's saying, Shlo haya hadavar ra ma'od be'enav bnei cheshek pilag shel v'chefzo ba, v'ilu amru lo shetgar she'am b'vadei osek ritzon Sarah, aval mepnei beno chara lo ma'od, v'lo ratza l'shmo eleha. So the Ramban says that the pshat is, you might have thought that it bothered him that there's this woman that he has this relationship with, and his wife is saying we have to get her out of the house. You might have thought that's what bothered him. The pasuk is clarifying that's not what bothered him. It was only about his son. God tells Avram, don't be bothered on either front regarding the maidservant or the son. He has to listen to what Sarah tells him. Yitzchak will be the only standard bearer for Avram. Yishmael will not, though Yishmael is biologically the child of Avram, Yishmael will not be known as his offspring. So now Avram's terrified. What's going to happen to my dear son? Again, Avram's a person of chesed to the stranger on the street. Of course, for his son. So God says to Avram, I am going to bless Ishmael. He is your biological son. There's going to be a whole nation that comes from him. He's not going to die now. Don't worry. But he's not going to be your standard bearer. I want to jump over to the Orach Chaim on Pasuk Yud Aleph, Alodos Beno, Perush, Vayetze L'Tarbus Ra. He's concerned that Ishmael is going to go down a bad path. The Shtaka Be'emunos Rose, but say someplace of it. What's going to happen to him spiritually if he has to leave my house? Because in the end of the day, he's Avram's son. Od Yirtza Alodos Beno, Asher Yichsa Ososaro Lahagar Ka'omro Ha'amavi Espana Ben Huama. Remember, we kept on emphasizing that Sarah keeps on referring to Ishmael as the child of Hagar, the child of Hagar, the child of the maidservant. And in fact, we even had the Sforno, maybe I forgot already which parish. We had one of the Perushim say, he's not, the Kliyakar, he's not acting like your child. He's acting like Hagar's child. Uva Kadosh Baruch Hu v'hitzrik divrei Sarah v'yomer lekol aser shema b'kola v'al tachshov oso bincha. The Orach Chaim says that what it means, alodos beno, is Avram is terribly bothered. Why do you keep on referring to him as Hagar's child? He's my child too. How could you write him off? How could you say he's not going to follow my path? He's my child too. That's what it means regarding his son. That's how the Orach Chaim learns the pasuk. But God says Sarah's right. It's an interesting thing to look at over here. Okay, let's go on to verse 17. Vayishma Elokim es kol anar. Hagar and Ishmael are expelled. They go off to a place. They're terribly thirsty, and Ishmael is sick, and it seems like Ishmael's going to die. And Hagar just lays him down, and she goes off to the side, and she raises her voice in prayer, and she cries. Now, verse 17, Vayishma Elokim es kol anar. Hashem heard the voice of the lad. Vayikra malach Elokim el Hagar min hashamayim. And an angel calls out to Hagar from the heavens. Vayomer lo malach Hagar. He says to her, what is your issue, Hagar? Al tiri, don't be afraid. Ki shama Elokim el kol anar ba'asher hu sham. God has heard the voice of the lad where he is there. It's a little bit of a strange thing. Heard the voice of the lad where he is there. Where else would God have heard the voice of the lad? There's a very, very famous Rashi on this, citing a Medrash, second Rashi, Pasuk Yud Zayin. It's a very worthwhile thing to reflect on coming into Rosh Hashanah. So God heard the lad where he is. Fimasim shu oseh achshav hu nidon. He's judged based on his current deeds. V'lo lefi ma shehu asid lasos. He's not being judged on what he'll do in the future. The angels in heaven were making complaints before God, and they were saying, Ribono Shalom, Master of the universe, Misha Asid Zaro Lahamis Banecha Batsama Atamalalo Be'er. You're going to miraculously bring water to this person whose descendants will bring terrible thirst to your people, to Klal Yisrael. How many tsaros have we had from Yishmael's descendants? How many articles and books about the Middle East have we read based on what Yishmael's descendants have done to the residents of the land of Israel, before the state of Israel, during the state of Israel? God responds to the angels, Achshav Mahu, what is he now? Tzaddik or Rasha? Is he righteous or wicked now? Presumably they don't mean is he righteous. Presumably means does he deserve to live? Amru lo tzaddik. The angels say, well, right now he deserves to live. Amar lahem. So he said to them, I'm going to judge him based on where he is right now. And that's Basher Husham. We talk about this a lot on Rosh Hashanah. We lane from it, obviously. We lane from it on Rosh Hashanah. The idea that if I can sincerely stand into tshuva in these days, so in the here and now, I'm a pretty good person. How sure am I that my tshuva is going to stick until later? I don't know. And how did I do last year on my tshuva? Once it was past Yom Kippur. But as long as God can look at me and sees my sincerity now, Ba'asher Husham, where I am at the current moment, hopefully we'll all deserve good things. So that's a lot of discussion of this source over here. Okay, so we discussed the Sforno regarding what exactly Shmuel was doing. We discussed the Kliyaka regarding the statement of Sarah that he won't inherit with my son. We discussed the Ramban and Or Chaim regarding what Yitzchak, what was disturbing Avram regarding his son, what exactly is meant by that. And we saw Rashi and Bashir Husham in Yishmael being saved based on where he is there.